Hi, Joe. I went ahead and recorded on each slide as if I had the audience in front of me. It isn't a perfect rendition, of course, it's a little rough, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how I was planning to proceed through the presentation. So, to give you an idea of how I was going to incorporate the hospitality and the servant leadership, and hopefully it all will flow well. So, please, if you don't mind listening to this and giving me your feedback, I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for all your help. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with me today. I know how precious your time is, so we are going to do our best to work together so that this can be a worthwhile experience for all of us. We've got lots of activities planned for today to help us share our wisdom so that all of us can serve our church well in these changing times. The pastoral plan has got us all excited because good changes are happening, and that means we all need to raise the bar and we need to look at how we serve each other and how we serve parishioners, visitors, the unchurched, everybody. So today we're going to explore how we can be hospitable, how we can incorporate service into our leadership roles, and how we can really, during these changing times, do even better than we already are doing so that our church can survive and thrive for many millennia to come. So we're going to have some fun today. And of course, at the end of the program, I welcome feedback. Constructive feedback is always helpful. So feel free to give it to me in person or via email or phone call, whatever way suits you. We will have a feedback sheet that you're welcome to fill out at the end, but just wanted to tell you all I'm very open to feedback. So thank you for being here. Before we start, I do want to give you a few details so that you'll know how we're going to work today. Of course, we do have food and drinks in the back, and you're welcome to get up at any time, stretch your legs, go get a cup of coffee. That's certainly fine to do. Also, we are going to take a break midway through so that everybody can stretch their legs and go take care of phone calls or whatever they need to do for a few minutes. We also will be working in groups today. You'll see that you're at tables and that you have a flip chart at each table. So you do want to select someone at the table who will be able to record all your great ideas on the flip chart as you work together in some exercises today. And also, you'll want to have someone who's willing to be the spokesperson for your group. We also are going to talk as a whole entire large group, and I'll record our ideas when we speak as a large group together. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you because we have a lot of wisdom in this room, and I think we're going to learn a lot from each other today, and that we're going to be able to make some great plans that will help our church to make some great strides. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you all, and let's go ahead and start with a prayer. Dear Lord, help us to work well together today. Give us your wisdom, and please, Lord, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right, let's get started. Okay, as you can see, I've said everyone working in the church leads. What do you think? Are we all leaders? Well, we are, because we are influencing others every day, and that is leading. And certainly we're trying to lead people towards God. So we're certainly leading. So when we think about leading, and we think about being a role model, it can be a pretty weighty responsibility. I mean, every parent has felt that weight, haven't they? That your child is watching everything you do. And in the church, I think oftentimes we have that kind of role also. People are coming into the church with very high expectations, and they're watching what we do, they're listening to what we say, and it's making an impression. And it needs to be an impression that leads them towards Jesus. And so if we want to be leaders and lead people towards Jesus, our actions have to speak louder than our words. And of course, our actions have to be actions that model our Christian values. So just to kind of think in terms of how actions can impact us and how they can really speak louder than words, let's do a little exercise. It only takes a minute, and I'm going to walk you through it. Everybody has to close their eyes for this exercise. And it's what you're going to do is you're going to think about the relationship that you had with a parent or guardian who had the greatest influence over you. And if both of your parents had equal influence, then fine, just, select one or the other. Imagine that you're with that parent. Where are you? What are you doing? Envision the scene. What do you notice? Describe the sights, smells, and sound in your head. What do you remember most about this parent? What do you appreciate most? What really stands out in this memory? Think about the lasting impact that your parent had on you and what matters most about your parent or guardian. Now take a minute and think about that. Okay, now when you're all done, open your eyes, turn to the person next to you, and tell that person whether you recalled things your parents said or things your parent did. And then we're going to talk about it. So take a minute and talk with someone at your table next to you about your memory and whether it was what the parent said, what the parent did, exactly what happened in the memory. And now we're going to go around, and anybody who wants to share, we're going to hear your experiences. Okay, so we definitely heard a lot of parental actions that really had strong influences, and that really you remembered more their actions than their words. And so I think how we act to one another every day at work probably has a big impact, more than we think it does. So when we, ignore a phone call, or when we snap at someone, it has an impact. Just the same as when we answer the phone on one ring with a pleasant "good morning, how can I help you?" Or we greet someone and act excited to see them. We greet people with a smile. It all has an impact. So let's talk a minute about Jesus. Talk about a servant, right? He was the ultimate servant. Jesus touched and healed lepers. He saved an adulterous woman from being stoned, forgave her, told her to repent and go on with her life. He took a tax collector in as his disciple. He washed the feet of his disciples at the Last Supper. He served in every way possible. He even died for us. He was the ultimate servant. And he's our role model. He's why we're here at work every day, right? So why not try to serve like the ultimate servant, Jesus? Okay, so I talked earlier about everyone can be a leader, and that oftentimes we do have to act in a leadership role. So what do you think? Is that true? Do you agree with that? I know I pretty much pronounced it as a statement, but what are your thoughts about it? Do you think that you're a leader in your everyday job? Well, Ken Blanchard and Phil Hodges started a Lead Like Jesus uh, organization. And they say that leadership is the process of influence, and that if you're trying to influence someone, then you're leading them. You're in a position of leadership. And they talk quite a bit about servant leadership. Have any of you heard that term, servant leadership? I figured. It's been around since I think 1977, I think is what I read. So it's been a term that's been around a long time. So what is a servant leader? This handy book, Leading Like Jesus, by Owen Phelps, has a story that I think gives an excellent description of a servant leader. And so I would like to read it to you because I found it to be rather inspirational. Owen Phelps had a Hindu gentleman tell him that he wanted to invest in his publication of this book, Leading Like Jesus. And Owen Phelps was pretty surprised that somebody who was of Indian descent, Hindu religion, would be interested in investing in his book. So he met with him and he found out a bit about why he wanted to invest in his book. So he says here, when he met with this gentleman, he says, he received me graciously and quickly confirmed his interest. I couldn't help asking him why he would want to invest in an explicitly Catholic product. He told me the story of a governess who practically raised him as a boy in India. She was a wonderful woman for whom he felt the deepest gratitude. It also happened that she was Catholic and faithfully attended Mass every Sunday. On occasion, she would take him along, and he was intrigued by the ritual. Although she was paid only a relative pittance, she always found a way to buy him birthday and holiday presents, something not expected of servants. In addition to her remarkable care and contributions to his development, he was impressed by her kindness and generosity. Eventually, she died, and he attended the funeral. That's when he learned it had always been her heart's desire to be a nun, but she hadn't joined a religious order because she felt an obligation to help support her family. Instead, she decided to live as a celibate governess and to send nearly all of her small stipend home to her family living elsewhere in India. Hers had been a life of totally selfless service. That realization overwhelmed him. He also recognized that the gifts she had bought him were purchased with funds she could have sent home to help her needy family. The thought that his happiness mattered so much to her was almost more than he could bear. In India, a land where religious tolerance has sometimes been a struggle and where Christians are just a tiny minority of the population, a poor and seemingly powerless governess imbued a young Hindu man with an appreciation for Christianity in general and a deep regard for Catholics in particular. He said he wanted to invest in My Catholic Enterprise for 2 reasons. It appeared to be an attractive risk/reward opportunity, and it would honor his boyhood governess. Who would say that this poor, obscure woman was not a leader? Indeed, her leadership was so powerful that it continued to exert an influence many years after she had gone to her grave. So what do you think? Was she a servant leader? Do you know anyone who's a servant leader? Let's talk about some examples of servant leaders. Okay, so Owen Phelps, in his book Leading Like Jesus, says that the Gospels make it clear that Jesus expects us to be servant leaders. So what do you think? Do you agree with that statement? Can you think of an example from the Gospels that would confirm that statement? Let's work at our tables in groups to talk about some gospel examples that either confirm or don't confirm that statement. So take a few minutes in your group and discuss it. Pick out your spokesperson. Feel free to take notes on the flip chart if that helps. And then when you're ready with your examples, just have someone in the group raise his or her hand, and I'll know you're ready. And then we can discuss the examples from the Gospels together. So I had a lot of fun reading about Pope Francis, and I think that he is a fan of servant leadership. I think that he definitely wants us to go out amongst the masses and be servants. He hugs the disabled, he washes the feet of prisoners, he eats lunch in the Vatican guest house cafeteria so that he can be near others. He believes that authentic power is service. And he is definitely a leader who serves like a servant. I think that's pretty clear. And what do you think about that? Do you think we should follow his example? Discuss it at your tables for a minute about how you see his example being one that we can follow, and how would we act in ways that would be similar to his style of leadership. So take just about 5 minutes and talk about that, and then we'll reconvene. And again, when your group is ready, feel free to just have someone raise his or her hand, and we'll know which tables are ready. Okay, as you can see, Archbishop Lori has definitely given us some direction. Does anyone know where this quote came from? I figured you all would know, because we've all been reading his pastoral plan and his letters and extensive documentation all about the pastoral plan. And of course, this is in his letter about the pastoral plan. So we certainly have been given our marching orders, haven't we, to go ahead and to serve the unchurched, to serve those who've been alienated from the church, to serve those on the margins who are vulnerable, to really reach out and do as Jesus did and be with those who maybe aren't the most popular crowd, right? So we definitely have that marching order in that direction. And it makes sense, doesn't it, that we would go in that direction, because certainly that's what Jesus did, that's what Pope Francis is doing, and that's what Archbishop Lori is asking each of us to do. And certainly we can do that in a myriad of ways, so we're going to talk about that further. Archbishop Lori has asked us to focus on 6 core mission priorities in order to help our church thrive in these changing times. And he's asked of course, to focus on liturgy, welcome, encounter, accompaniment, sending, and mission support. One of the things that really is interesting is the description of welcome. And so I've put it here, and it says, of course, welcome is to practice radical hospitality and welcome as Jesus did, seeking out to the disenfranchised and vulnerable and creating a sense of fellowship and belonging that is grounded in love for each other and humble gratitude to God. So he definitely wants us to reach out and be welcoming. So when we hear the term radical hospitality, some things can really go through our mind. I mean, radical, gosh, I think of my sister's first husband, but that's a story for another day. But radical hospitality is not meaning that we're going to, jump up and down and scream. It means that we're going to really go above and beyond and really give the absolute utmost of ourselves to those that we serve. And, let's think a minute about all the people that we serve and how we can really do that service in a way that's radical. We can really go that extra mile. And there are lots of ways we can do that. And we're going to do some exercises to explore some ways that we can do that. But look at these definitions a minute, and they're quotes from a book by Robert Schnees, who is a Methodist minister who wrote a book on radical hospitality that I found very interesting. I recommend it. But as you can see here, it's saying that it really is talking about, giving all of your energy, and inviting and being receptive to everyone, regardless of who they are and where they come from and why they're there. Being having open arms for all. The idea of radical hospitality has been around a long time. Saint Benedict of Nursia was actually had a rule that he developed that was considered radically hospitable. And he really started to imbue into his monks the whole philosophy of being just always welcoming. So whoever comes to the door, you welcome the divine in that stranger. So when someone comes to the door of the monastery, you're to treat that person as if they are Jesus coming to the monastery. And so that's pretty radical. And that was all the way back in, the 400 to 500 time frame AD. So this idea has been around a long time. And it certainly won't hurt to be radically hospitable, I don't think. What do you think? So trying to be radically hospitable, to be of ultimate service to others, will these efforts really work? Well, when you think about it, we belong to the body of Christ because somebody was hospitable to us. We wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be working for who we work for if somebody hadn't introduced us to Christ, if somebody hadn't invited us into that relationship, invited us into a church community. So we need that practice to continue, and we need it to change with the times. So we need to really be even more in that invitational posture, because today we have a lot of competition for people's time and talents, and we've got to really invite them in a way that's appealing and hospitable. So I bet you all have examples of experiences in church settings that maybe weren't the best. And I'm going to share with you a personal experience that I had that was rather interesting at a church that will remain nameless. I had been involved in a church for several years, had been a volunteer at the church, and a parishioner who was very well known there, very well liked, lovely lady, approached me and said, "I would love for you to come to a ladies' sodality meeting. We really need to boost up our membership, and frankly, we need some younger people." And this was several years back. I think I was in my 30s at the time, so it was a long time ago. And I said, "Oh, okay." I really was friends with this lady. I liked her. I didn't really know what the ladies' sodality was, but I said, "Okay, I'll see what it's like." So I went to a meeting on an evening, weeknight evening, and I walked in, and there were lots of round tables with 12 chairs around each table, and there weren't many people sitting. There were a lot of people standing around in little clumps talking. And so I saw a lady sitting at a table all by herself, and there were all these empty chairs around her. So I thought, oh, I'll go over and introduce myself and sit with her. So I went over. I said, "Hi, I'm Molly. How are you? I'm here for the first time tonight." And she said, "Well, you can't sit here. All these seats are reserved." I said, "Oh, okay." And then I looked down and saw that she had this box right in front of her of knives. There were these big steak knives sitting right in front of her. And I looked at them, and she said, "I'm selling these at the break. I said, oh, okay. So I went on to the next table. There was another table with two ladies sitting there and a whole bunch of empty chairs. And I once again said, hi, I'm Molly. How are you? I'm here for the first time tonight. And one of the ladies said, well, you can't sit here. All of these seats are saved. So I said, oh, okay. So then I went over to my friend who had invited me and I said, I think I know why you might be having trouble getting new members to join the sodality. So, unfortunately, a few other incidents happened that I didn't find very welcoming, and I actually left that parish and went on to a different parish. But uh, it was quite a interesting experience to have. And we have a good example of a church group dealing with how to be hospitable. And I'd like to show you all a brief film that I think really displays how you can incorporate hospitality at church. So Park Grove has their work cut out for them, don't they? And in some respects, we have our work cut out for us too. So we're going to work in groups. We're going to use the worksheets that are on the table. You'll see that there's a pile of worksheets right in the middle of the table there. Please, each of you just grab one, flip it over. It has a Bible passage and some discussion questions. So go ahead and discuss the questions together. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes to work together on this, and then I'll check in with you and see if you need more time or if you feel ready to discuss it and have each group report. Okay, it's time for a break, so we're going to take 15 minutes. Please get up, move around, stretch. When you hear music, I'll put on Casting Crowns again. When you hear them, please come back in and get ready to join together again and do a little more fun activities together. Now we're going to get to the heart of the matter here. We're going to work in groups, and we're going to imagine that each of our groups has to serve a unique person who's coming to our church in a variety of circumstances. As you can see, they're all here. You aren't Catholic. This is just the closest church to your home, and you're visiting this Sunday. You aren't attending church, but your spouse has dragged you here for the weekend. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to come around to each table and assign you one of these folks, and your group is going to figure out how we can be radically hospitable and an ultimate servant to this person so that we can welcome him or her into our fold and introduce them to Jesus if necessary. So let's work in groups to devise our plans. I am impressed with all of the plans that you came up with. We definitely have a wise group here today. So I really enjoyed hearing about all of these great ways to be radically hospitable and to be ultimate servants. Jesus would be proud of us for sure, for sure. So I know that Archbishop Laurie has asked us to be a light brightly visible. And he's asked us to think about, our church building, our employees working there, our parishioners who come there every Sunday, how we perform our sacraments and our liturgy each week, all aspects. The parking lot even, how does that look to folks and how does that work for folks? Everything, how our outreach programs work. Are they organized well? Are they accessible? Are they, easy to explain to folks? So let's think about that a minute and how really our churches look to an outsider and how they feel to an outsider, someone walking in. for the first time. And let's think about how can we be welcoming? What is a way that we can serve that really would be the way Jesus would expect us to serve? Let's talk about that, and I'll record our ideas as we discuss them. So when we talk about being an ultimate servant and servant leadership and being radically hospitable to others, I mean, we're talking about loving one another as Christ loves us, and that's a tall order. It's easier said than done. So, but of course, with God, all things are possible. So there's hope for us. What are some things that we can do as individuals to show the love of Christ to one another every day in our workplaces? What are some ways that we can be a light brightly visible in our community, in our nation, in our world? What are some ways? So let's go ahead and talk about that for a few minutes as a large group. And again, I'll record our ideas. But I think that with all the wisdom in this room, we're going to be able to come up with a long list. So let's take a few minutes and then we'll see if we need another break or not. So Ken Blanchard, who's known as the person who wrote the 1 Minute Manager and is a management guru, of course, who's well known, has started an organization called Lead Like Jesus, which is great because he's taken all those management skills and put them to a super worthy cause, the church. And of course, he has lots of thoughts about how you can serve like Jesus. And there's a video where he talks a bit about this in pretty down-to-earth language. And I thought it might be nice for us to all listen to. And then we can talk a little bit about the habits that are suggested for someone to practice servant leadership. So Owen Phelps gives us 9 habits that we can use so that we can be better servants. And they're things that are definitely geared towards Catholics because he's a Catholic and he's addressing his book to Catholics. So it's nice because it talks about, of course, prayer and practicing solitude so that you can hear from God, reading scripture, worshiping and receiving the sacraments regularly, exploring the lives and writings of saints and Christian scholars, considering how the sacramentals and devotions affect us and how they can help us. So praying the rosary, for example, and how that can be a helpful practice for us to grow closer to God. Accepting and modeling unconditional love, of course, serving others, right? Jesus wants us to do that for sure, and to build our community. So those are the 9 things that he feels, if practiced on a regular basis, will help us to be better servants and to serve like Jesus. So let's take a minute. We've got some important questions here about if you're ready to be an ultimate servant, if you're ready to be radically hospitable, and do you think being radically hospitable can be a springboard for evangelization? So I'd like you all to take a minute and discuss these questions, the answers that you feel you have to these questions. If you can spare a little more time, you're welcome to start to write down your plan for how you can incorporate hospitality and ultimate service in your daily work. And if you want to start to do that today while you're here, take a few minutes and do it. I welcome you to do that. I'm a firm believer in not asking others to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. So I've gone ahead and posted what my plan is for how I will try to be a better servant and to serve the church better. And so I have my plan here, and you're all welcome to read it. So I want to thank you all for your time and all the work that you put in today. I've learned a lot from all of you, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your enthusiasm today. I really do. And I think that if we all remember that we are on a mission from God, as those unlikely servant leaders, the Blues Brothers, told us they were on, that we will be in good shape, because really that's the bottom line. We're doing this for God, and therefore it's the best cause ever. And so we can feel pretty good about it. So let's finish off with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together today, and thank you for helping us to share our wisdom with one another. Thank you for helping us to be productive, keep us close to you in our daily work, and help us to be radically hospitable servants for your kingdom. Amen.